Hello, and welcome to Let's Master English. This is your host, Sarah, and today we're going to talk about a topic that most of us try our very best to avoid. We're going to talk about failure. I want you to take a second and think about a specific moment in your English learning journey. A moment where you felt your face get hot with embarrassment. Maybe you were in a coffee shop and you completely froze when the barista asked you a simple question. Maybe you were in a meeting, tried to make a joke, and it landed with a thud of confusing silence. Or maybe you simply looked at a page of text and felt a wave of despair, thinking, I will never understand this. We've all been there. These moments are painful. They feel like a verdict, a final judgment on our abilities that says, you're not good enough. Our natural instinct is to retreat, to play it safe, to avoid any situation where we might feel that sting again. But what if I told you that these moments of failure are not the end of the road? What if I told you they are the road? What if every mistake, every awkward pause, and every misunderstood phrase is not a sign of weakness, but a breadcrumb trail leading you directly to fluency? Today, we're going to completely reframe your relationship with failure. We're not just going to learn to tolerate it, we're going to learn how to use it. We'll explore the psychology of learning, draw wisdom from some of the most brilliant minds on the planet, and I'll give you practical, actionable strategies to turn your biggest mistakes into your most powerful lessons. This isn't just about mastering English. It's about mastering the art of learning itself. Part 1. The mindset shift from verdict to data. The first and most important step is to change the way we think about failure. Most of us operate from a place that Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck, in her groundbreaking book Mindset, calls a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset assumes that our intelligence and abilities are static, carved in stone. When we fail from this perspective, we see it as proof of our inherent limitations. I failed the grammar test because I'm just bad at grammar. The alternative, and the key to unlocking your potential, is the growth mindset. A growth mindset understands that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. From this perspective, failure is not a verdict. It's simply data. It's information. It's a signpost pointing to an area where we can grow. As Dweck writes, why waste time proving over and over how great you are when you could be getting better? Why hide deficiencies instead of overcoming them? The passion for stretching yourself and sticking to it, even, or especially, when it's not going well, is the hallmark of the growth mindset. I want you to think of yourself not as a student taking a pass-fail test, but as a scientist in a laboratory. Your lab is the real world. Every conversation, every email you write, every movie you watch is an experiment. Sometimes, an experiment doesn't yield the expected result. Does the scientist throw their hands up and say, I'm a terrible scientist? No. They say, interesting. That hypothesis was incorrect. What did I learn from that outcome, and how can I adjust the variables for the next experiment? When you try to use a new phrasal verb in conversation and it comes out wrong, you're not a bad English speaker. You're a scientist who has just gathered crucial data on how that phrasal verb is not used. This mindset shift is everything. It transforms failure from a source of shame into a source of strategy. Your actionable tip: The next time you make a mistake in English, I want you to consciously stop the internal voice that says, "I'm so stupid." Instead, I want you to say one word, either out loud or to yourself. Data. Just that one word. I used the wrong preposition. Data. I couldn't understand that person's accent. Data. This simple act of relabeling begins to rewire your brain to see mistakes not as an emotional event, but an intellectual one.
Part 2. The Failure Autopsy, a practical framework for learning. Okay, so we've relabeled our mistake as data. Now what? We can't just collect data, we have to analyze it. This is where we perform what I call the failure autopsy. It's a simple 4-step process for dissecting any mistake to extract its lesson. Let's use an example of a listener. Let's call him Pierre from Paris. Pierre is in London and goes to order a coffee. The barista asks, "Have that in or take away?" Pierre freezes. He doesn't understand the phrase. He panics and just points at a pastry. He walks away with a croissant he didn't want and no coffee, feeling deeply embarrassed. This is a classic failure moment. A fixed mindset would say, "My English is hopeless." A growth mindset pulls out the scalpel for an autopsy. Step 1. Isolate the moment. Be precise. What was the exact point of failure? It wasn't the entire interaction. Pierre successfully walked in, got in line, and was ready to order. The failure point was the specific question. Have that in or take away? Step 2. Identify the gap. What specific piece of knowledge or skill was missing in that isolated moment? It was a vocabulary and listening comprehension gap. Pierre didn't know the common British English phrases for here, have in, or to go, take away. The speed and accent of the barista likely made it harder to parse. Step 3. Create a micro-lesson. Now turn that identified gap into a tiny, actionable learning objective. The goal isn't get better at listening. That's too vague. The micro-lesson is learn and practice 5 common phrases used in a British coffee shop. Pierre can now go and Google ordering coffee in the UK phrases. He'll learn have in, take away, you all right there, a regular or large, etc. He can practice them by saying them out loud. Step 4. Re-engage, the do-over. This is the most crucial and courageous step. Within the next 24 to 48 hours, you must intentionally recreate a low-stakes version of the failure scenario to apply your micro-lesson. Pierre's mission is to go to a different coffee shop the next day. He will walk in with his new phrases prepared. When the barista asks the inevitable question, he will be ready. He'll say, "Take away, please." Whether he does it perfectly or not doesn't matter. The act of trying again, armed with new knowledge, is what cements the learning and rebuilds confidence. He has taken a moment of shame and systematically transformed it into a moment of mastery. This 4-step process, isolate, identify, learn, re-engage, can be applied to any failure, from a misunderstood word to a poorly written email. Chapter 3. The courage to be imperfect. Embracing vulnerability. The logical framework of the autopsy is powerful, but it doesn't always quiet the emotional sting of failure, the feeling of shame, of being exposed. This is where we need to talk about vulnerability. Researcher and author Dr. Brené Brown has spent decades studying shame and vulnerability. In her book, Daring Greatly, she argues that vulnerability is not weakness, it is our most accurate measure of courage. She writes, "Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. There is no innovation and creativity without failure, period. Every time you open your mouth to speak English with a native speaker, you are being vulnerable. You are stepping into an arena with no guarantee of success. And, according to Brown, this act of showing up and allowing yourself to be seen, imperfections and all, is an act of immense courage. So, how can we cultivate this courage? Practical tip: the failure resume. I want you to start a new section in your journal. Title it My Failure Resume. On this resume, you will list your failures. But just like a real resume, you won't just list the event, you'll list what you gained from it. Failure: botched my coffee order in London. Lesson learned: mastered 5 essential British café phrases. Gained confidence in a specific real-world scenario. Failure: tried to tell a story in a group conversation and used the wrong tense, confusing everyone. Lesson learned: realized I need to review the difference between the past simple and present perfect. Practiced storytelling with my tutor. Failure: sent a professional email with 3 embarrassing typos. Lesson learned: learned the importance of proofreading out loud. Installed the Grammarly extension as a safety net. Over time, this resume becomes an incredible document. It's a written record that proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that your mistakes are not liabilities. They are your assets. They are the tuition you pay for the education of fluency. It reframes your entire history of failure as a history of learning and growth. Let's imagine a listener, Lena from Stockholm. She's in a business meeting with American colleagues and says, "Let's not beat around the bush and cut to the cheese," mixing up 2 idioms: beat around the bush and cut to the chase. There's a moment of awkward silence. In that moment, she feels shame, but later she adds it to her failure resume. The lesson is, idioms are tricky and culturally specific. She creates a micro-lesson to study common business idioms. The next day, she even mentions her funny mistake to a friendly colleague, who laughs and shares a time they made a mistake speaking Swedish. The moment of vulnerability, when processed correctly, leads to both learning and human connection.
Part 4. Building Resilience. The Habit of Failing Better. One failure can be a great lesson, but language learning involves a constant stream of small and large failures. How do you keep going? The answer is resilience. And resilience isn't some magical trait you're born with. It's a skill you build through habit. In his phenomenal book, Atomic Habits, James Clear explains that massive success comes from tiny, consistent actions, not from once-in-a-lifetime transformations. He writes, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems." The most effective way to change your habits is to focus not on what you want to achieve, but on who you wish to become. We need to build a system of learning that makes failure an expected and manageable part of the process. If your goal is become a fluent speaker, the pressure is immense, and any failure feels catastrophic. But if your system is practice speaking for 5 messy minutes every day, then failure is built into the expectation. Practical tip: lower the stakes and shrink the goal. Your goal for today is not to have a perfect hour-long conversation. Your goal is to have one imperfect 30-second interaction. Your goal is not to understand an entire movie without subtitles. Your goal is to catch 3 new phrases. I once heard from a listener in Japan named Kenji. He had an excellent grasp of English grammar and vocabulary from years of study, but he was terrified of speaking. The gap between the perfect English in his head and the clumsy English he imagined would come out of his mouth was too wide. He was paralyzed by the fear of failure. He adopted an atomic habit. His system was this. Every day on his way home from work, he had to ask one stranger a simple, low-stakes question in English. "Excuse me, do you have the time?" Or, "Sorry, do you know if this train goes to Shinjuku?" The first few times were terrifying, But the stakes were so low. If he failed, he'd just walk away, and no one would ever know. But he didn't fail. He succeeded in tiny ways, and each tiny, imperfect success was a vote for his new identity. I am a person who speaks English. He wasn't aiming for perfection. He was just aiming to show up. Over months, that tiny habit built a foundation of resilience that allowed him to tackle bigger and bigger speaking challenges. This brings to mind the famous quote from Samuel Beckett, "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail better." The goal is not to avoid failure. The goal is to build the habit of failing better each and every day.
Part 5. Creating your safe-to-fail environment. Finally, it's crucial to be strategic about where you fail. While we must be courageous in the real world, our primary practice should happen in an environment where the emotional and practical costs of failure are low. 1. Find encouraging partners. When looking for a language tutor or exchange partner, your #1 criterion should be finding someone who makes you feel psychologically safe. Find someone who smiles when you make a mistake, who sees it as an opportunity to teach, not to criticize. A good partner will say, "That was a great try." A more natural way to say that would be 2. Utilize low-stakes digital arenas. The internet provides incredible sandboxes for failure. Write on forums. Go to a site like Reddit and find a community related to your hobby, like r/gardening or r/movies. Write a comment. The stakes are low. If you make a mistake, someone might correct you, or most likely, no one will even notice. It's perfect practice. Talk to AI. Use apps or even the voice function on your phone to talk to an AI. Ask it questions. Tell it about your day. It will never judge you. It's a perfect, patient, non-judgmental listening partner. Journaling, as we've discussed in a previous episode, is the ultimate safe-to-fail space. It is just for you. You can make a million mistakes, and it's all just data for your own review. 3. Use the pre-mortem technique. For high-stakes situations you can't avoid, like a job interview or a presentation, proactively embrace failure in your preparation. Ask yourself, what are all the ways I could fail in this situation? Write them down. I might forget a key vocabulary word. I might be asked a question I don't understand. My pronunciation might be unclear. Then, for each potential failure, create a backup plan. Backup plan for forgetting a word. I'll use a filler phrase like, I can't seem to find the word, but what I mean is, and then describe the concept. Backup plan for a confusing question. I'll have a phrase ready like, could you please rephrase that? Or, so, if I understand correctly, you're asking... By anticipating failure, you strip it of its power. It's no longer a terrifying surprise. It's a manageable scenario for which you have a strategy. Final thoughts from Sarah. Your journey to mastering English will not be a straight, ascending line. It will be a messy, looping, zigzagging path, paved with mistakes and marked by moments of doubt. And that is not only okay, it is the only way. The stumbles, the forgotten words, the awkward silences, these are not flaws in your journey. They are the journey. Every single error is a lesson, a guide, a gift of data showing you exactly where you need to go next. So I ask you to be brave. Embrace the growth mindset. Be a scientist in the lab of your life. Perform the failure autopsy. Build your failure resume and wear your lessons like badges of honor.
Cultivate the atomic habit of showing up even imperfectly. Your failures do not define you. Your response to them does. So go out there, try, and yes, fail. No matter, try again, fail again. And with every single stumble, fail just a little bit better. You'll be mastering English before you know it. That's all the time we have for today on Let's Master English. Keep learning, keep growing, and be courageously imperfect. I'll talk to you next time.